I'm Larry. Most of you know me. For those that you don't, I'm not the pastor. I'm so excited to get the opportunity to come up here and do my sermon for the first time in front of the ones that I love. I'm sorry if I don't look at you. I'm extremely nervous right now. The two things that I'm super passionate about are church and recovery. And I especially try to bring the two together because that's how I really feel going through recovery myself. I'm an open book. I don't try to hide anything about who I am, especially to my family. A strong case, probably more than a strong case, between God and church could also another one be made for my grandchildren. I do love them a lot. This sermon has been written for a while now, since I had to write it for a class. I've also had the guidance from Pastor Rick to help me out. As far as class goes that I'm taking to hopefully become a pastor, one of the things that we learned very quickly is that a sermon needs to match the church's needs. And for me paying attention around here, the way that I try to do and everything, this was the main thing that I saw that we need work on, and that we're in the direction that we need to go. That's how I picked the topic for the sermon. It became truly right to me the day that I was told that I was going to get the opportunity to do this. 3 weeks ago, I walked out the hallway there, and I was talking to Brother Randy. And I told him, I said, man, I'm nervous. And he goes, why? You're in front of family. And that's how I knew I picked the right topic, because that's exactly what this sermon's about. But not only that, but this last Wednesday I came in, and everybody goes, you're preaching Sunday? And I said, yeah. And then my wife goes, yeah, he's really nervous. And I said, they all said the same thing. Don't worry, you're in front of family. So, but they did also say on Wednesday that they were going to throw tomatoes at me. They hit me again, like I said, because that's exactly what this message is about. It's a team effort for building and bonding of the church. I'll be mentioning family many times in this sermon, and unless specifically stated, it means home and church family together. Please, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, I thank you so much that you've given me the opportunity to come up here and try and talk to the ones that I love the most, and especially have the chance to be with them, because I know that they love me also. I ask that the things that I wrote, the things that I say, are what you guided me to write and what's sweet to your ears, Lord. Please be with me as I go through this message to be able to share what it is that you want shared. I love you and thank you for everything. Pray in Jesus' name, amen. In our family, we've been in a rough road, haven't we? I feel we're finally ready to move on. One thing to move forward, I believe, is to understand 4 groups in the church. Not only if we understand these 4 groups that I will be mentioning as we go, but it'll also help us understand how to better get people here as we grow. I'll be asking a couple questions here and there if I feel like I'm getting too nervous. If you answer, that'll help me feel like y'all are up here holding my hand with me to keep me a little bit calm. The 4 groups I will be talking about are in age groups. With the exception of the first age group that I'm going to be talking about, there really isn't a whole bunch of give because you can't go any lower than 0. So the first age group is 0 to 12 years old. What qualities do you think of when you think about 0 to 12 years old? Youth? Too much energy most of the time. Okay. The first one that I wrote was innocence. It's so easy to look at babies and just marvel at the cuteness and innocence that they are pure and not knowing right from wrong yet, until they get older anyways. I love watching the ladies go out goo-goo over the babies and young children, partially because I could just sit back and think, well, my babies are cuter. Just kidding. They're all cute. I still think mine are cuter. Along with that, they have the eagerness to learn. They are thirsty for knowledge. Isn't it annoying with them getting into everything? And then as they start getting older, they start asking every single question that you could ever think of. My 23-year-old son still does that to me, but I love him to death. I lost my place now. Let me say this, though. It may seem annoying at the time, but if you can plant and water a seed of faith just by having patience and giving good godly guidance, then isn't the minor annoyance worth it? They're extremely bold. They learn their limits quickly and find things that hurt. I was going to use my daughter as an example because she's the oldest, but I'm going to use my youngest son and say, my wife would say, when the kids were younger, she'd go, "Where's Stephen?" And I would go, "I don't know." And then I'd look back, because we never sit at the table to eat. I'd look back and I could see him down in the kitchen, and I'd say, "He's in the kitchen." She'd go, "The stove's still hot." I'd look over and I'd say, "Well, he figured that one out." They learn real quickly what their limits are, and they don't touch the stove again, usually after the first time. It's very scary to see and realize how trusting this group is. Is it easier to have your family and faith family around you to help guide your loved ones in the direction that you believe, or let the others that aren't start to lead them astray? For me, this age group is almost non-existent. I'm talking about me. It's almost non-existent for the horrors my family and I went through. I won't go into detail right now, but we'll tell you that with the bad upbringing of my biological father, it damaged me for a long time. I can only remember a few things till the age of 10, and what I do remember is terrible. What happens to this group, whether good or bad, can last a long time, if not a long time, or a lifetime. We'll talk more about this stuff later as we go along. In Matthew 19, Jesus is teaching. And for what happens next, I think the disciples are thinking, don't bother him. Don't bother the teacher. Because in Matthew 19, 13 through 14, it says, "Then little children were brought to him, that he might put his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven.'" Children are innocent, and as a family we should nurture and revel in it. The disciples weren't trying to be harsh just because they thought Jesus wouldn't want to be interrupted. It's just that in that time and era, women and children weren't treated the same as we do now. I'm going to read a couple verses here that Rick suggested, and I feel were a great suggestion. He when I gave him my sermon, I thought he was going to mark it all up. But he only gave me 2 suggestions, and this is one of them. As we continue with these attributes of each group, think about these 2 verses. Paul is speaking in Corinth and referring when the right time to switch spiritual people from milk to solid food. 1 Corinthians 3, 1 and 2. "And I, Paul, brethren, could not speak to you as to spiritual people, but as to carnal, as to babes in Christ. I fed you with milk and not with solid food. For until now, you were not able to receive it, and even now, you are still not able. When I think of carnal, I think of some bad, scary movie or something. But when Paul says carnal here, he means immature Christians. Think about this as we continue with the next groups, because as we go through the next groups and the qualities of each one and stuff, I'm pretty sure that most of us here can figure out where we're at, whether we need more milk or we're ready for solid food or we're in solid food. Moving on to the next group is teens to young adults. I got 13 to 29. This was terrible to remember and write. For one thing, I had 3 teens that drove me nuts. But if we're being honest here, I'm pretty sure none of us were completely innocent. At this point, which can actually start earlier than 13, independence and rebellion begins. Yes, in the previous group, children are trying to test the boundaries and limits. But now we're talking about teens trying to define who they are. We as a family should try our best to keep feeding them milk and develop the good talents that we see them growing into. In the early years here, it becomes harder to shield our loved ones. Teens, they're going out and stuff, playing around. Others can swarm in like vultures, and if not careful, take them to places we never wanted them to go. To bring them back is not to hound or force them to come back, but to be patient, loving, and always let them know that we're here for them. To push too hard to bring a loved one back often succeeds only in pushing them farther away. Make sure to let them know that we've not given up on them. When all else fails, you could try your hardest to help somebody through all their troubles. You still can't push too hard. You have to let them go through their cycle of what they're going through, but never let them forget that you're there for them when they're ready. The previously mentioned issues in here also could include the oldest of this group. Now getting older, getting jobs, and most likely starting a marriage and families of their own, stress creeps in. And having a strong spiritual family willing to help can make all the difference. Hopefully, tools were put in place to allow the young adults the best chance to succeed. I will tell y'all, I had great support growing up through this time, through my young age after the stresses that we got through. I let the things that happened to me affect everything from the last section to this section. Just because we set the tools in place doesn't mean they always hit home. The things that happened made life hard on my wife and children, but my wife, family, and I know God never gave up on me. If we are persistent and follow through with love, we should have as Christians, let me rephrase that. If we are persistent and follow through with the love that we have as Christians, then what I've said in the last example fits Galatians 6:9. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not lose heart. Now I believe that God put all the groups in our lives to support each other, not to give up or succumb to challenges just because a member of our family decides to wander astray. It's time to suck it up and pitch in the best that we can. The ones eating solid food at this point in their Christian lives are best equipped to help here. But if you're still drinking milk, don't think you just have to sit back. Watch and learn. Because next time it might be your turn to help. Now for the middle-aged group. I can't get out of any of these. I've got 30 to 59. At this point, most of us are thinking, we got this life thing down pat. Wrong. Life is hard at all ages, at all stages. I'll be the first to say that it wasn't till age 35 I really tried earnestly and wholeheartedly in the whole giving God control part. Gradually, my life is moving to the better. And at 47, I still have a ways to go. But I love life and the direction that Jesus is leading me in. You don't have to answer, but can others of you relate on how long it took you to come to Christ or follow what he's telling you to do? Usually by this age, we've begun to think we're smart. I've always thought smart was just people with doctor in front of their name. But even the smartest people still need common sense. It can get you through a lot in life, yet many lack it. The older you get from young past this group, I hope you find and teach common sense whenever possible. It's something that can help so many of us, especially the young ones that usually don't listen. As we go through this group, we're beginning to see our children get older and trying to rein them in without having heart attacks. If married, we're finding out that marriage is a challenge to keep fresh and new every day. Whatever made you get married is one thing, but true love is what keeps you there. I don't say challenges as a bad thing, but as a learning tool. Always remember the challenges because you never know when a young couple will come to you asking for advice because they're having problems. I know this because my wife and I did to others we respected when we were in need. And this is a problem that I'm walking around here because now I'm going off script. One thing in recovery that we learn real quick is to watch the people around you. Because there's people out there that are actually what would consider here eating solid food. They're living the life that we should be living. And somebody like me who's having issues and stuff, or my wife and I when we were going through our issues, we see that person. Not because of what they're saying, but because of what they're doing and living it. We're going to go to those people. It's like a magnet. We want to learn from those people. We want what they've got because we know that it's better for us. Now, if you really think about it, I think I say this a lot. Now, if you really think about it, this is the time you might realize the reasons for what your parents or other adults were trying to teach you. You usually realize this because you're pulling your hair out, if you have any, due to the mistakes that you've made in life, and you're trying to stop your kids or whatever from doing the same thing. Some things we wish we had listened to the ones wiser than we cared to admit at the time, and the ones that we've lost. I've gotten, I think they're called quotes here, whatever, parentheses quotes, that wooden spoon. When my mom and dad finally divorced at 10 and got us out of the situation that we were in, we moved up to Michigan. Such a horrible place. My Aunt Jenny said, okay, y'all can come up here, but you got to go to church, and the kids got to do what I say. if you didn't do what she said, she had a wooden spoon. And man, she would crack that sucker up top of my head all the time, it seemed like. Y'all, a lot of you know here that I've got a ministry that I do online. And she's a big inspiration. Oh, gosh. She's a big inspiration for me doing that. But she passed away before I was able to really let her see what she inspired in me. Sorry. But man, I wish I could feel that wooden spoon every once in a while in my life, because I know I still need it. As we start to move closer to the Flintstone group, the ones with big feet because they had to pedal their cars, you know. Hopefully the ones that didn't have strong families have found the strong church families they need to help them improve and succeed. We can look back in life to help others in challenges God has put us in, to help others go through the same or similar challenges. Keep your eyes looking forward to stay on course. You can't change the past, but you can affect the future. Job 12:12 says, "Wisdom is with aged men, and with length of days, understanding." As we get older, wisdom is great. Some develop great common sense, but by the time we get old, we have seen, been through, and done most everything every group below old needs help with. Now we're officially in the old part. I know that all this group, not to mention that the other previously 3 groups, I should have said this at the beginning, have all come to Christ. That's including the old group here too. But that's when all the groups are up to help remind them what they've been through and bring them home. Benjamin Franklin had a great quote, and I see it in a lot of the old people in church that I go with and other churches that I've been in. This quote says, "Those who love deeply never grow old. They may die of old age, but they die young." I see that so much when I see a lot of the old people around that I give hugs to all the time. Why do we say old people are important, especially in church? It's for their wisdom, endurance in life, strong faith, and teaching. How do you get to be old? By going through and conquering a lot of challenges through a lot of years. Life's temptations, bad decisions, addictions, life's hardships, deaths of friends and family, debilitating changes as we get older. It really starts hurting when you get old. Loved and hated jobs, but doing what it took to make sure your family was taken care of. This one is the hardest for my generation. But some of the older ones here might think differently for what they've gone through. But all the different challenges brought on by different political beliefs and population ideologies. That's all I'm going to say. For right now, I think that's the hardest thing right now. The good news about all of these that seem bad, that I just said, are that with God, they conquered those. Hopefully, with a strong, faithful family and strong church family. I don't have to say much about this group because everything throughout this whole sermon has all led up to everything that an old person is. You don't get to be old just because. It's because you started at the bottom group and worked your way up. There's no getting around it. We all start somewhere. Zero's the best. A church can't be just all young people or old people. A church has to have a mixture of all groups to share love, experiences, and wisdom. We don't get that way just by hoping. We need to be sincere in the strongest form of that word, with the love and family atmosphere. Young adults and teens need to feel wanted and useful. The young adults will bring their kids, and the teens will bring their friends. The aged need to be mindful of the youth to help, but not overstep. Walk the walk, don't talk the talk. I know I say that a lot, but that means a lot. Listen and step in at the right time. A lot of the time, people just want you to listen, especially kids. For all the groups, let the old share and teach. Let them share the experiences they went through so everyone has a choice to follow the good advice and teaching. As I've said that, remember about being ready for milk or solid food from Paul. Every person is different, and the life of Christ can be understood and taught effectively by others and at different ages. Don't dismiss anyone teaching just because they seem young. I'm reminded of Brother Roy. He talks a lot about a preacher that came a couple years ago that he was just in awe of because the guy was young. And he couldn't believe the understanding and the way that he was able to convey the word of the Bible and what he meant. Just put him in awe. You can't dismiss anyone just because they're young. This is one way that we build the church and one way we build a stronger family in faith here, now, and into the future. Before I share Philippians 1:6, Paul is talking about the Christians at Philippi that are continuing to keep the faith and love in Jesus Christ. Philippians 1:6 says, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. I believe that this can also mean us keeping the family strong and keep the cycle going to the day of his return. It is never time to stop being loved and never time to stop loving, especially if you want that strong home and church family. As I go into the invitation, if you feel you need help in any of these groups, if you feel you are falling short in or into the next group, if you aren't sure if you're ready for solid food, then I invite you to come forward and pray. If you don't want to come forward, stay where you're at. God don't care where you pray. Invite somebody to put their hands on you if you want. Grab the hand that Jesus has out for you at all times. Strive to live up to every expectation that he's molding you into. In my ministry, I say 4 short phrases after I do every message because they mean so much to me, and I hope that they mean that much to you. Stay strong, stand firm, stay the path, and most of all, always stay faithful. I thank you all for your time. Love y'all, and God bless.